Mahalo and hello. So I've read some headlines that sound concerning to me as an American, okay? I mean, it's part of a broader trend of Europe kind of trying to disassociate with America, or not even just disassociate, but, you know, reduce their reliance on America, really, in the wake of all the BS that Donald Trump has said and done. Understandable, you know, obvious ramification, bad ramification that's going to take place if you think for 2 seconds about, you know, the implications of, well, for instance, for one instance, threatening to invade Greenland. They're going to start viewing you as a security risk, you know. Anyway, sorry. And so this is just one example of that, potentially. I don't know the full story. That's what I'm reacting to now. It's by L Talks Global. Check her out, link down below. I believe she has a YouTube channel. This is on TikTok. Germany bans USA tech, and the headlines I had seen specifically were about Microsoft Teams. All right, so let's do it.
All government documents. Germany just banned Microsoft Office formats from all government documents nationwide.
What?
Every federal ministry, state government, and municipal office, from Berlin to the smallest town council, can no longer use Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, or Excel files. Only 2 formats are permitted: Open Document Format and PDF. Microsoft's
No way. Whoa.
proprietary formats are excluded entirely. This might sound like a technical IT decision, but when you really dig into what this actually does, it is a deliberate move to cut American tech companies. It's been an ISO standard since 2006, currently on version 1.4. It's vendor neutral, meaning no single company controls it. LibreOffice, the open-sourced Office suite, uses ODF as its default format. Microsoft Office can...
I used to use OpenOffice back in the day, man. That was a long time ago. Now I use Google Drive, which, I mean, certainly not, you know, like an open source alternative or anything, which is what's interesting about OpenOffice. But it is essentially free. So it's so convenient having your documents across all your devices. Dang it. It sure is convenient. Too bad it's, you know, kind of dystopian to have all your documents hosted by, you know, a company. Anyway, this is really pretty shocking to me.
Read and write ODF, but Microsoft's native formats are proprietary, controlled entirely by Microsoft, which is a U.S. corporation headquartered in Redmond, Washington.
It's just like a dependency risk, you know? And with the uncertainty of the world, especially, strangely enough, as the world goes on, it seems to be getting less certain. For a long time, it seemed to be trending toward, you know, becoming more rules-based and more certain. But uncertainty has certainly gone through the roof. And so, like, just depending on anything from some centralized organization that isn't even in your country, I think is a risk. So that makes sense that you're going to move toward an open source. I think that's pretty cool, actually.
The Deutschland stack explicitly lists reducing lock-in effects as a core goal, prioritizes open source solutions, and favors European providers over foreign alternatives. Proprietary document formats create structural dependency on the company that controls them. When every German government document for the past 2 decades exists on Microsoft formats, Germany essentially needs Microsoft software to read its own records.
Now, is that 100% true? That's what I'm wondering right now. Because I know, for example, I know I can import Microsoft formatted documents into, like, Google Drive, and it will convert them and open them. I'm just going to ask, even though I kind of feel like I know the answer to this, you know, I'm just going to clarify this specifically. You know, if every German document exists in Microsoft Office proprietary formats, does that mean Germany needs and depends on Microsoft software to read the documents? Okay, so this, yeah, I mean, this is essentially the answer that I thought, which is like, no, third-party software can read those documents and convert them to other formats, you know, and therefore, you know, you're not exactly relying entirely on Microsoft documents. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't essentially, like, you know, in other ways, tie you into that ecosystem. Apparently, the newer standards, when they added the X, I remember that. I'm old enough to remember that. When .doc went to .docx. These are based on Office Open XML, which is an international open standard. Okay, so that's actually, that's a pretty cool move by Microsoft, to be honest. So, I mean, the actual reality lies somewhere in between the two. It's essentially an open standard that's created by and upkept by a private company here in the States. And it's mostly obviously used within their own ecosystem. So anyway.
Exists on Microsoft formats, Germany essentially needs Microsoft software to read its own records. Microsoft sets licensing terms, prices, update schedules, and compatibility rules. If Microsoft decides one day to discontinue support for...
Yeah, I feel like the real dependency is on the Microsoft. You don't want to be depending on the Microsoft software. The formats of the files at this point, considering it's an open standard now, is not the main concern. It's more the dependency on the software that you want to get away from, maybe.
Older formats, which it has done repeatedly, governments lose access to their own archives unless they pay for migration services. If the US government issues a national security letter or a FISA court order compelling Microsoft to provide access to data, Microsoft has to comply. Even if EU government documents are stored on European servers, they're encrypted and accessed through software controlled by a US company. The encryption keys, authentication systems, and file format specifications all flow through American corporate infrastructure. The EU legal framework already points towards this outcome as well.
Okay, I've just been thinking about what she just said, and at first I was assuming she meant even if the files are stored on a non-Microsoft server, which is obviously not true. That's impossible. Microsoft can't just access files just because they're in a Microsoft format if they're not stored on a Microsoft server. But that's not what she meant. She meant the cloud servers, even if they're hosted in Europe, are still subject. If they're owned by Microsoft, they're still subject to US court orders, which is true. And of course, this goes back to the ecosystem, being that if you're using the Microsoft suite, then there's a good chance you're also using the Microsoft cloud. Now, I know that Europeans are smart enough to not store classified information on a Microsoft cloud or on any cloud. So there's that. And then furthermore, those documents can be locally encrypted to where Microsoft cannot read the files if you encrypt them locally. And you're the one holding the keys, which of course should be standard practice for any sensitive, or really any government documents. So, what she said, I'd say, is half. It's true, but if you didn't know what I just said, it could very largely mislead you to believe that the situation is much worse than it actually is. Does that make sense?
The encryption...
And I'm not trying to dog on her. I'm just saying, I think she would agree with what I just said. That's just the truth.
Keys, authentication systems, and file format specifications all flow through American corporate infrastructure. The EU legal framework already points towards this outcome as well. The European interoperability framework requires open standards and avoiding formats creating supplier dependency. The Cyber Resilience Act, Network Information Security II, and Digital Operational Resilience Act mandate controllable technologies for EU digital infrastructure. Documents are how decisions get recorded and communicated. They're essentially infrastructure. The Interoperable Europe Act, which came into full force 2024, explicitly cites open standards, which in the document context mean ODF, not OXML. The US could theoretically compel Microsoft to deny service, revoke licenses, or provide backdoor access. Under open standards, those pressure points disappear. Germany controls its own infrastructure regardless of relations with Washington. The Deutschland's tax made in EU first principle means European companies, Libre's Office Document Foundation, European cloud providers, European data storage, all of those become default procurement targets. American companies lose not just software revenue, but ancillary services, consulting, training, and integration contracts that surround proprietary ecosystems like
That is interesting. That's a good point.
this. This is how digital sovereignty translates to
It's like there's more than just the first order effects of this type of disintegration with American software. You know, it can cause a huge impact. And also it goes beyond even just software. You know, it goes into like real world contracts, you know. There's like a huge network effect, which like that's the good and the bad being America in this situation is the network effect is so powerful and causes so much integration. It's very difficult to break that integration, but the flip side of that is like once it starts breaking and if it sufficiently gets to that point where it's being replaced, then that's a catastrophe for the U.S., I believe.
economic independence translates to geopolitical leverage. When Europe controls its own document infrastructure, it can negotiate with the US from a position of strength where American tech companies are not embedded in every government office. That's the significant shift Germany just initiated. For more context on how desperate the US position is becoming, Germany just...
Nope. Just ended abruptly. All right. Well, that certainly is interesting and part of a potentially larger trend. All right. Wow. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow.